fight for the unborn. President Joe Biden signs more executive orders, and he appears set to allow taxpayer money for abortions in foreign countries. We have pro-life reaction, plus a preview of tomorrow's March for Life in the nation's capital. Coronavirus crisis, what China is saying about an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. And distributing the vaccine. The Vatican has a message for world leaders and drug giants. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, January 28th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden strikes down a pro-life provision known as the Mexico City policy. That measure kept U.S. taxpayer dollars from funding or promoting abortions overseas. Pro-life groups were quick to condemn today's executive action. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. The Mexico City policy comes and goes depending on which party is in office. Now, President Donald Trump expanded the pro-life mandate when he was in office. Today, President Joe Biden erased it.
Protecting women's health at home and abroad.
With the stroke of his pen, President Joe Biden revokes the Mexico City policy.
Basically, the best way to describe them, to undo the damage Trump has done.
The pro-life setback was not a surprise. I questioned White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about it last week. The next day, Dr. Anthony Fauci confirmed the policy would be reversed. And today, President Biden made it official. The Mexico City policy, drafted by the Reagan administration in 1985 and most recently reinstated by President Donald Trump in 2017, requires foreign groups to prohibit U.S. aid dollars from being used to pay for or promote abortions.
I think it's a tremendous tragedy that a self-professed Catholic, our current president who carries his rosary, who attends Mass, is involved in abortion policy that kills children.
The concerns don't end there. The Hyde Amendment, which helps prevent tax dollars from paying for Medicaid abortions, has an uncertain future. And writing the Roe v. Wade decision into law is a major goal of the new administration.
It's a dark day for our country, and all the more reason for the pro-life movement to rally, to grow, and to work to defeat these threats in the future.
But on the eve of the March for Life, where pro-lifers come together, albeit virtually this year, to re-energize and redouble their efforts to save lives, there is the sting of pro-life policy swiped away in mere seconds. The head of pro-life group Susan B. Anthony List writes, funneling U.S. tax dollars to abortion groups overseas is an abhorrent practice that flies in the face of the unity Joe Biden and Kamala Harris promised to inspire.
Republican lawmakers were quick to condemn President Biden's order. In fact, U.S. Senator Marco Rubio called it unconscionable. Now, President Biden is also looking to restore Title X family planning money to clinics in the U.S. that promote abortion. President Trump, you'll recall, pulled that money. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And as Owen just mentioned, pro-life leaders were quick to respond to today's White House announcement and the message that it sends. Jeanne Mancini, president of the March for Life, joins me now on Skype. Jeanne, welcome back. Always great to see you. Jeanne, what do you make of today's executive order and the timing of it?
Well, I think the fact that it's on the eve of the March for Life is, all the more just really sad with everything that we've seen and heard from President Biden over the past week, both about his Catholicism, but ignoring some of the church's most fundamental teachings on human dignity, as well as, of course, just this idea of unity. Mainstream America is against overseas funding. I mean, largely against. So 77% of Americans are against taxpayer funding of abortion overseas, and that includes many self-identified pro-choice Americans. So today was a decision of abortion extremism, pandering to abortion proponents and the abortion lobby. It did nothing for unity, and it certainly did nothing for human dignity.
Indeed. Jeanne, the administration frames this as protecting access to health care. What would be your response to that?
Abortion isn't health care. Abortion is taking something that is beautiful, that is a miracle. Abortion is not a disease. Pregnancy is not a disease. It's a healthy, miraculous, beautiful growing thing. So the bottom line, abortion is not health care.
Jeanne, I want to go back to what you mentioned about that poll. The Knights of Columbus Marist poll did show, as you said, 77% of those surveyed said they either oppose or strongly oppose using tax dollars to pay for abortion procedures around the world. Let's talk about the message that you think is being sent to Americans.
Right. I think that Joe Biden is a little bit sophisticated in his team's messaging about these things. Again, calling himself a devout Catholic and talking about unity, which sounds really attractive and appealing, but he's not delivering very early in his presidency on that. So I think he's sending a message to Americans that he is going to be true to his promise of being the most pro-abortion president in history. So it's a very sad message to Americans, including some pro-choice Americans who still don't want their tax dollars funding abortions overseas.
Well, of course, as you know, tomorrow is the 48th annual March for Life. We're all excited about it here. We know it's going to look a little bit different because of the pandemic. Can you tell us what we can expect?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, we're partnering with EWTN. Thank you so much, Tracy, and everyone at EWTN for all of your work in that. So tune in to EWTN or to March for Life website at noon, and there you'll see the rally, and that will go from noon to about 1:15. And then right at 1:15, we'll move over to the march. It looks a little different this year. We've got a small number of pro-life leaders, and I just want to take a minute to say this could never reflect all of the beautiful pro-life apostolates around the country and the world. So we're not even releasing the name. It's just a handful, some diocesan leaders, some international leaders, some state legislators, et cetera. It's just a smattering of people who do great pro-life work around the country. And so we'll be marching together. And so stay tuned on EWTN to see that. I believe it's going to be, even though very different, I think it's going to be a really moving, a very somber march, this 48th annual March for Life, a historic march.
Yeah, Jeanne, we have about a minute left, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about the significance of the event, especially this year.
Well, Tracy, I think our culture is at a crossroads right now. I've been thinking this all this past year. I've never, been in a moment where I couldn't go to church every single day, much less on Sundays for 2 months. And I never thought that our march would look different. And so many things that you never thought would happen have happened this year. And to see the violence and the divisiveness in our culture, I think all the more we're called to pray and fast and do everything that we can in our actions to build a culture of life, including just being incredibly respectful to the people right in front of us who might disagree with us on ideology, et cetera.
Very well said. Looking forward to tomorrow. Really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Jeanne.
Thank you, Tracy.
Well, the nation's Catholic bishops continue to urge President Joe Biden, the second Catholic president in U.S. history, to reject abortion. And joining me now is Archbishop Joseph Naumann of the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas. He is also the chairman of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Pro-Life Activities. Your Excellency, welcome back. So good to be with you. Thanks so much for coming on. Walk us through your mind as you witness these pro-abortion policies being put forward by the Biden administration.
Well, it's a sad day for the nation, but it's a sad day particularly for us as Catholics to see a president who professes to be Catholic doing these things that are so contrary to our moral teaching.
Yeah, and today's executive order really is a reminder of the challenges that are posed by Catholic politicians who support policies that are in opposition to church teaching. If you had the opportunity, what would you say to President Biden?
Well, I would say, wake up, think about what you're really doing here. I mean, it's his soul is in jeopardy, I believe. And when they use euphemisms, when you're violating fundamental human rights, you use euphemisms. And so you say this is health care for the poor. What other health care procedure does two people go in, one comes out dead and the other one's scarred? Emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. So to call this healthcare, this is really, I think, social imperialism, inflicting our values and trying to inflict the sexual revolution on the third world countries. It's really tragic that anybody would do this, but particularly one who professes to be Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, we talked to Jeanne about this. What kind of message does that send to people, in particular Catholics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very contrary to what he campaigned on as being a unifying president. I mean, he's obviously in debt to pro-abortion forces within his party, and he's just conforming to them. I wish he was as orthodox in his Catholic faith as he is in doing what Planned Parenthood instructs him to do.
Yeah, I know. I want to bring this up. I know you wrote in one of your columns, quote, "While we defend passionately the sanctity of human life and the dignity of the human person, let us not villainize those with whom we differ." I think that's really important. That's a really important point. Let's talk about that and what you like to see as we work to continue to protect life.
Right. So people that disagree with us, they're not our enemies. They're individuals that haven't yet become awakened and enlightened. And I've been in the pro-life movement long enough to have seen so many amazing conversions. Dr. Nathanson, Beverly McMillan, both abortion providers, Abby Johnson. So we have to always have this hope, and we can never give up on people, but we have to speak strongly, clearly about the action, but not villainize the individual.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make. One thing I also want to talk about is I know that you're the principal celebrant and homilist tonight for the National Prayer Vigil for Life. Would you mind sharing some of the message for tonight on the eve of March for Life?
Yeah, I hope to communicate a hopeful message to all of our people tonight to remind us that Jesus is our Lord, and presidents have a lot of power that are given to them by the American people, but they don't have the power to redefine Catholic teaching, moral teaching. That's not a power that they're entrusted with. But, I think that there are so many good things, positive things that are going on in the pro-life movement. And I look at, we have this Walking with Moms in Need initiative to increase the resources to surround women with difficult pregnancies with love and support. So there are many points of light, even in the midst of the darkness of some of these sad executive orders that we've seen a flurry of in the last few days.
Yeah, important to say. And of course, the vigil tonight is taking place. We can watch it at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on EWTN. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Well, we're grateful to you and EWTN and for all the coverage that they give to the March for Life. Thanks.
Yeah, it's so important. Thank you so much again for being here. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, the Archbishop of San Francisco, who is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's Archbishop, responds to her pro-abortion comments made earlier this month.
It's church teaching, but it's not exclusively church teaching. I mean, this is killing children in the mother's womb, just as killing children outside of the womb is not something we need revelation to understand is wrong.
Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of the Archdiocese of San Francisco also explains how the House Speaker is misleading many Catholics. That is tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly at 10 p.m. Eastern. Coming up, what a Republican lawmaker is saying about tomorrow's March for Life. Tonight, the Capitol Police Chief is calling for permanent fencing at the U.S. Capitol. This after a national terrorism bulletin warning that the January 6th riot at the Capitol could set the stage for additional attacks. And today, U.S. lawmakers are appealing for help to ensure their safety back home in their districts that they represent. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, while there are no specific threats of potential violence at this time, more than 30 bipartisan members of the House are now calling on House leadership. They want clearance to use their congressional allowances so they can bulk up security in their home districts. Today, Speaker Pelosi responded.
We want to have a scientific approach to how we protect members. I do believe, and I have said this all along, that we will probably need a supplemental for more security for members.
Also today, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell condemned President Biden's repeal of the pro-life Mexico City policy, and Senator John Thune thanked pro-life Americans for their work ahead of tomorrow's March for Life.
Tomorrow, I will be joining my prayers with yours that one day soon, the right to life of unborn human beings will be protected in law.
As the senators prepare for their role as jurors in next month's impeachment trial of former President Trump, some Democrats are now considering the option of censuring Donald Trump. They may not have enough votes for a conviction. And today in his remarks on the Senate floor, Republican leader Mitch McConnell did speak about that march. He said this new Washington needs to hear the marchers more than ever. He says he's looking forward to 2022 when the March for Life will be in person again. At the Capitol, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the state Senate in South Carolina has passed a measure to ban most abortions, but it still has to clear the state's House of Representatives. However, it has done so in previous years. Republican Governor Henry McMaster says that he will sign the measure. Up next, the Vatican has a message for world leaders and drug giants regarding the coronavirus vaccine. China confirms that a team from the World Health Organization will start a fact-finding mission today to find the origins of the COVID-19 outbreak.
世卫组织国际专家组来华后，根据国际
A spokesman for China's foreign ministry says the experts have completed a 2-week quarantine in the city of Wuhan, and the team will carry out virus tracing. China has strongly opposed an independent investigation into the origins of the coronavirus. Protesters in Poland demonstrated against the new pro-life law last night. A court ruling that bans abortion of babies with birth defects went into effect yesterday. Abortion is only allowed when the mother's health is threatened or if the pregnancy is the result of a criminal act. In Lebanon, clashes over the lockdowns left 1 person dead and over 200 injured last night. People say they are frustrated at the restrictions. People in Lebanon are not only facing strict lockdown measures, but also dealing with a severe economic crisis. The deteriorating living conditions have led to violent protests every night this week. Iran is reporting that it's moving its nuclear program closer to weapons-grade enrichment. Officials say they have produced 17 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium in less than a month, and they are threatening to produce more unless they get relief from sanctions. President Joe Biden has said that he wants to return to the Iran nuclear deal. The top Catholic official in Iraq is giving the first details of Pope Francis's historic visit to Iraq in March.
Plusieurs fois exprimé sa volonté pour venir en Irak.
Chaldean Patriarch Cardinal Louis Raphael Sacco says the Holy Father is still going to Baghdad despite a recent deadly terror attack there, and Pope Francis will be meeting with the top Shiite Muslim clerk Ali al-Sistani. The Vatican Secretary of State started his 7-day trip to Cameroon today as a sign of the Pope's care and concern for Africa. On behalf of the Holy Father, Cardinal Pietro Parolin will meet with the country's government officials and religious leaders. He will also visit the Household of Hope Center that has been providing assistance to street children and young prisoners for the past 40 years. The president of Italy continues talks with party leaders to find a solution to the country's latest political crisis. President Sergio Mattarella met with parliamentary leaders this morning. The crisis erupted after Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte resigned Tuesday when a key ally pulled support for the government. He is still trying to form a new coalition government. The Vatican is weighing in on the global distribution of the coronavirus vaccine. The Holy See's COVID-19 Commission urges world leaders to make the vaccines available to all of their citizens. The commission adds the vaccines are playing an essential role in defeating the coronavirus crisis and ending the pandemic. Joining us now is Father Christopher Mahar of the Healthcare Services Office in the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. He is also a member of the Vatican's COVID Commission. Father, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. Tell us, what prompted your commission to make the statement to world leaders about the vaccine?
Well, I think one of the challenges, Tracy, is what they're concerned with is the Vatican, the nationalism that can kind of come through these crises and challenges. So sometimes we can have this tendency to take care of our own first. And I think in many different crises in the world, sometimes it's not as vital because there's only one part of the world that's caught up with the crisis. It could be a tsunami in one part of the world, but now the tsunami has hit the entire world. And I think there's more of a challenge and there's more of a threat that some nations would hoard for themselves the vaccine and not be thinking about the nations that can't afford such a thing. And we need to really take care of each other during the moment of crises.
Yeah, absolutely. We are now more than a month into vaccine distribution. Are you optimistic that the vaccine will be made available to everyone?
I am. To be honest with you, Tracy, I'm optimistic, period, because we have a vaccine. Right? So this is a very different place than we were several months ago. So we do have a vaccine today. Can you imagine how dark it would be and how hopeless if we still didn't have anything in the future that was going to bring some kind of an end to this crisis? So I'm optimistic from the beginning. Even more importantly, I'm optimistic that these nations will get the vaccine because, as Pope Francis has mentioned, when we hit a crisis, we should be changed. We should become better. We should become different. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for the whole world to kind of move forward, to look at the other people that are struggling perhaps more than we are, and to be mindful of them. And so everyone can do something. In particular, we can pray as a church for those that are less fortunate, those who are most in need. And for those that have the ability and the means to make these decisions that can help those who are suffering greatly in parts of the world that would not see the vaccine without that generosity, this is the time for us to be a church that thinks outward and thinks for others.
Yeah, it's so wonderful that we have the vaccine, but still there are people who are on the fence about getting it. What would you say to someone who isn't sure if they should take the vaccine, primarily because of how it may have been produced?
Okay, yeah, it's a great question, Tracy. I would say, first of all, this is not something that's just come up sort of like a flash in the pan kind of quick fix. This is something that's gone through trials. It's something that's gone through a lot of the scientific rigor that we really want to put all the vaccines through. It's not something that's happened overnight. And so we want to trust in the science. The Vatican COVID-19 Commission is continuing to keep abreast of the situation for what the vaccines are doing, their efficacy, their safety. So we're still watching that, and so is the rest of the world. And so I think it's important to think not just of what is going to happen in my life, but how can my life affect those around me? And we know, scientifically speaking, that the more people that take this vaccine, the closer we are to moving forward beyond this crisis. So I would really, really strongly suggest that those who are considering whether or not they should take it, to think about not only themselves, but those around them that might be more vulnerable than themselves, and to be cautious and to be aware of that and to act in charity.
Well, Father Christopher Mahar of the Healthcare Services Office in the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it, and thank you for what you do.
You're welcome, Tracy. Thank you.
And just a reminder, as we have mentioned, tomorrow is the March for Life, and EWTN will bring you extensive coverage. Coverage begins tonight with a national prayer vigil for life from the Basilica of the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception right here in D.C. at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, our live coverage of the 48th Annual March for Life starts at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.